So you did actually do a 40K run in your training.
Yeah, I was actually just shy of a 40K, but that took 5 hours. So it's a really large time commitment. I felt like I put in so much time into it, but when you talk to people who are actually training for a marathon, and they're like, you've got to be kidding me. You didn't train for it at all. Whereas I felt like, what do you mean? Every time I was going for these long training runs, it was at least a 2-hour commitment.
Part of it is not even just the distance, but it's like you're just running, moving at a greater than walking pace for that amount of time is something to condition your body to. You have to know that, okay, I can sustain a running pace for this distance.
Yeah, and the time is so vast that a large number of things can go wrong. 4 or 5 hours, that's a large chunk of time. There could be a whole variety of different things that you have to be able to manage to make sure that you successfully get to the end point.
Welcome to State of Health Podcast. This is your host, j-mart. On this podcast, I will share my knowledge and experience as a personal trainer and health coach, and talk about my interests and experiments in physical training, nutrition, and other lifestyle factors involved in health. On this episode, I'm rejoined by my friend Daniel Yores to discuss the key points from my 2024 marathon attempt. Dan is a personal trainer and the host of the Daniel Yores Podcast. He had me on his podcast to ask questions about my training, what obstacles I faced, and how race day went. We also briefly discussed what his goals were and what we plan on doing in 2025. Leave a comment if you enjoy the podcast. Just before we get started, this is a reminder to subscribe to my Substack found at jmartfit.substack.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, hit subscribe if you want more content, and hit the notification bell too. If you're listening through a podcast app, please share the episode with a friend or a loved one. All right, let's start the episode.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Joined here once again by my good friend, j-mart. John, thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on every year.
I've obviously had a little bit too much caffeine this morning already, and I feel like I'm thinking faster than my mouth can move. So I've got to try and slow myself down before I'm just like slurring words and spitting sounds all over the place without actually saying anything cohesive. But to get into it, I mean, we've done a few episodes now over the years of the podcast. And last time we spoke about our New Year's goals for 2024. Mine didn't go so well, and maybe we'll talk about that at the end. I wouldn't say it was a total failure, just, didn't achieve the goal for various reasons, but you did. And your goal was a little bit more, I'd say, interesting than mine, and you actually had a legitimate plan, so which obviously helps, and that's something that we'll definitely talk about throughout this thing. But just for anyone who maybe didn't listen to it, I don't remember the number of that episode, but I'll get it and put it in the show notes, whatever the last one was. But you were set out to run a marathon this year, and you did so without any injury. So congratulations on that. That's huge.
Thank you.
But tell us the story.
Yeah, so let's just start with a little bit of a background. About 10 years or so ago, I did try running a marathon with about 2 months of preparation, and it didn't go so well for me because I overtrained, didn't give myself enough time to adapt, and I only completed 3/4 of the race. After that, after 30 kilometers into it, out of 42, I just had a huge swelling on my knee that was so painful. Even when I was just sitting, not loading it, it was quite painful. So it just didn't make sense to continue that all the way to the end. So I just stopped, didn't go try that again for many, many years. And then just very recently, I decided to restart the training with running again as a way to complement my jiu-jitsu training, because I really wanted to improve the endurance when I'm playing jiu-jitsu so that I don't tire out midway through, like, let's say, a 5-minute round. And, lots of people doing that sport or wrestling or any sort of martial arts, they're always incorporating running as a way of improving their endurance. So I thought, okay, this will be a way to do that. And at the same time, to hit 2 birds with 1 stone, because I can go back to my original failure and, cross that off the list of things to do. So I decided to come at it with a much kind of more long-term approach than the first time. Instead of having 2 months to prepare, I used 2 years to prepare. So last year I ran a half marathon. I did that in sub 2 hours. And then this year I decided to, continue that further and complete the full marathon and basically do the same type of training that I did last year. And one thing we talked about last year that really surprised you was the fact that I only averaged 1 run per week as I was getting ready to run the half marathon. And at the time for the half marathon, I think that was actually quite a good amount of training to be able to succeed without feeling like I didn't give it my all. I really think that that was a good amount of time to like do one good hard run per week, have enough time to adapt and feel better so that the next time I was stronger and I could do more. This time around, I had to do, double the distance, so 42 kilometers instead of 21. And the amount of training I did was similar in that I only averaged like one run per week to do that. And the reason for that was because I was still continuing to do jiu-jitsu as my main form of getting physical activity. I do that at least twice a week and then supplement that with another run per week. Some weeks I did run twice a week, some weeks because of vacation or whatever, I didn't run at all. So it averaged out to that. And I got to say, if you're going to be training to do a full marathon, one run per week is just not going to cut it. It worked for me. It worked for me because I have a history of training for many, many years, not specifically running, but just physical training, weightlifting, calisthenics, whatever it may be. I have a long history of that. I also have a long history of running as well, even though I hadn't done it seriously for a long time. For many of the sports teams that I've played on, running is a big component. Having had all that previous history made it so that just one run per week was just barely enough for me to accomplish this goal and finish the marathon at a decent pace and without hurting myself. That was the most important thing.
This is one thing I posted it a few weeks ago. I know we talked about it, but my thought was like, and I was kind of just posted this just to stir some shit up and see what happens. But it kind of plays into what you're saying though, that I think that someone who's in decently good shape could finish a marathon with basically no training. And what you're saying almost lines into that, where like, of course you train, and of course, you should definitely train. I wouldn't encourage anyone to try and do a marathon with no training. It's just like, what's the point of that? But with a lot less training than you quote unquote should be doing, you were able to do it because you are generally fit. Now, if you're someone coming off the couch, haven't been lifting weights, didn't previously play sports, aren't doing jiu-jitsu, like aren't doing things, yeah, like, you run once a week, you're probably not going to be able to run a marathon. Your body's just not going to be able to handle it. But, thanks to all of the other training and the years of training that you do, one run a week was sufficient. Now, I have two questions with that. One, the frequency of runs was like roughly the same as your half marathon, but was the volume of your runs different? Like, were you running more per session? And how did you change any of your other training? Like, were you lifting more or less, or jiu-jitsu more or less frequently, or anything like that?
Yeah, the other training stayed pretty much the same. It was mostly jiu-jitsu, and I did very minimal weight training actually this time around. It was mostly running. The volume or the distances that I ran were significantly more. Obviously, it's like twice the distance from 42 for a full marathon to 21 for just a half. So you have to have a greater volume of training that you're doing. So in terms of how I structured it, is initially in the beginning, I just made sure I was back to the same shape that I was when I finished the half marathon. So it took about a month or two to doing another half marathon where I was like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm back to where I was. Right. Following that, then I decided what my plan was going to be, because I already knew that I was just going to be able to do one run per week. Was I would do one long distance run that would match or actually increase my previous long distance run that I did by 5 kilometers. I decided 5 kilometers was a good stretch because to me, 5 kilometers is almost like, I won't say nothing, but I know if I only have 5 kilometers left that I got this. Right. So just by increasing by that metric, it seemed like a reasonable amount. So after I ran the half marathon, which is like 21 kilometers, then I increased by 5, 25, 30, 35, 40 kilometers. But in between all those long distance runs, I just had short, what I call consolidation runs, which were only 10 kilometers. So previous to that, when I was doing the half marathon, my short consolidation runs were 5 kilometers only. So I just doubled that to 10 kilometers. And then I did a bunch of, so I think overall it was only 5 really long distance runs. So a 20 kilometer one, a 25, a 30, a 35, and a 40 kilometer one. And that was it.
So you did actually do like a 40K run before the marathon. Like you basically did it in your training.
Yeah, it was actually just shy of a 40K, but it was so for my long distance runs, it was always very slow paced, trying to be in zone 2. And I was just trying to really enjoy the run and not run so fast that I was just like really hating it and wanting to quit.
Right.
When I did the 40-kilometer run, that took 5 hours.
Yeah.
In my slow pace.
For sure.
And so it's a really large time commitment to train for a marathon. It really is. So I felt like I put in so much time into it, but when you talk to people who are actually training for a marathon and they heard how much time I put into it, they're like, you've got to be kidding me. You barely didn't train for it at all. Whereas I felt like, what do you mean? Like every time I was going for these long training runs, it was at least a 2-hour commitment.
Yeah.
But
I think part of it is not even just the distance, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like you just moving at a greater than walking pace for that amount of time. Like the amount of steps, for lack of a better word, of like kind of running, prodding, pounding is something to condition your body to. So even though your training 40K took you 5 hours, like you knew that on race day, obviously you're going to go faster than that or try to go faster than that. But you have to like know that like, okay, I can like sustain a running pace for this length of time or for this distance for this distance.
Yeah. And the time that you're spending is so vast that a large number of things can go wrong, right? 4 or 5 hours, that's a large chunk of time. There could be a whole variety of different things that you have to be able to manage to make sure that you successfully get to the endpoint. And that is one of the larger, things to think about when you are preparing or running a marathon is like, what are the things that could go wrong and how do I make sure that I have strategies to mitigate them? Yeah. So we can go over eventually, like on race days, some of the things that I had to deal with. But yeah, it's just it's a long time commitment to run that distance. So you just make sure you know what's going to be coming your way and you have a plan to mitigate it.
For sure. Planning for the strategy of the race is a gigantic thing. And that's where I think you could make up a lot of where a generally fit person could probably physically run a marathon with basically no training if they had a good plan in place for race day to mitigate these things. But if you didn't have, and you never thought about it, you're like, oh, I'll just like put on my running shoes and like go for a run for 4 hours. Like that's a greater chance of failure. But before we get into like the more race day specifics, tell me a little bit about like what would you change in your training looking back. Now, you're not going to just fully dedicate yourself to marathoning. I'm sure part of it would be better if you didn't do jujitsu and just focus on the marathon only, but that's not what you wanted to do. So for someone who's in a similar boat as you, where it's like, yeah, I want to run a marathon this year, but I'm not going to dedicate all of my time. Like I have a job, I have a family, I have things to do. How would you change your training if you think that one run a week is not it worked for you, but like probably not ideal?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, increasing how many runs per week you do is a good idea. If we're going to take maybe more of a specific approach to individualize it, you have to kind of look at what your weakness is and then address that weakness. So personally, I didn't have an issue with my cardiovascular system. I didn't have an issue with like energy stores, being able to like, use them to be able to do the runs. It was really like a structural issue again, just like the first time I tried doing a marathon. I had my right knee specifically would feel pain almost like a clock every time I passed the 25-kilometer mark. After that distance, it was just like, okay, you've overused this joint. Now there's going to be pain to let you know that you need to stop soon.
Right. Why do you think that is? Well, what's going on with your right knee?
So I'm right-sided, so it's most likely my right side is my power side. So I'm using that side more for pushing off than I am on my left side, if I had to guess. And 25 kilometers is a long distance. If you're not training that at a high frequency, which I really wasn't, I would get basically one really good long distance run per month. It's just, that's not enough to get that adaptation for that much of a distance. So it's just overuse. Right. But luckily it wasn't so much so that there was any like acute pain or any acute tear or tissue damage. It was just kind of letting me know that, you're getting close to something like that happening, but so be careful. And I was feeling it out. I was changing certain things to make sure that I am, lessening the impact of each step as I'm running.
Right. I guess for anyone, no matter how good of a shape you're in, when you're pushing your body like to the limits, like no matter what, there's going to be a weakest link. It doesn't mean that that part of your body is weak. Like your right knee is not weak, but in the chain of your body, combined with the way that you move and your running technique and the way that you push off and all of those things, then for some reason, like your right knee is a weak link in the chain. And there's always going to be a weak link. And then that thing is going to quote unquote break first when you're pushing the limits. Like something's got to give, and like that's going to be the thing. So for someone else, it might be, your ankle, your hip, your back, who knows? But there's always going to be something.
So I would have liked to have spent more time doing like knee strengthening exercises and also a little bit more time doing plyometrics, specifically for the right knee. I think had I done a little bit more of that, that could have helped prepare me for race day a little bit better. Hard to say, but given the fact that I didn't actually end up injuring myself, I just simply had that nagging pain letting me know that I'm, probably, dancing with the devil, but not quite there.
Right. So would you say that like is two runs a week enough? 3 runs a week? Like where's the sweet spot if you're still doing jiu-jitsu, like say at least twice a week?
Yeah,
and then how do you split up like slow runs and fast runs with that?
Yeah, so I've used the 80-20 principle where I'm using 80% of my runs as slow zone 2 runs, and then 20% are fast-paced runs or hill sprints. That's a very basic way to start, and then you can tinker from there. I don't know if I can really comment on how many runs per week is ideal. It's kind of just like you got to test it out and see. But for those long distances, it's got to be, you got to really rack up the mileage to get that adaptation, because as I noticed that this is becoming an issue, I did start to do a little bit more knee strengthening exercises, a little bit more plyometrics, but I couldn't increase the frequency of the runs. And, I think it helped a little bit, but it's hard to say one way or another. It's just something you have to be aware of.
Yeah, I don't expect that there would be some blanket answer, because obviously everyone's life is different. Like in an ideal world, you'd be training 7 days a week. Like that, I think that would be the ideal. And that doesn't mean like long, hard runs 7 days a week, but that means like some type of productive training 7 days a week. But if you have a job and a kid and, you're not an Olympic marathon runner, like, yeah, you're probably not training hard 7 days, like 7 days a week, because that's just not realistic. So probably the answer is somewhere like as much frequency as you can possibly handle, given your ability to recover and the other things going on in your life. Does that sound more reasonable?
Yeah. And you got to definitely incorporate recovery into the formula of what you end up doing. And I really like I said, that 80-20 principle, you really want to make sure most of your runs are going to be easygoing runs. Like I said, in the zone 2, in case people don't know what zone 2 means, usually that just means slightly faster than just simply walking, where your heart rate, you're keeping it fairly low, about maybe 140 beats per minute or less, which, by the way, is very hard to do. And in the beginning, when you first start running and you do have a heart rate monitor and you're checking, you realize that it doesn't take very much effort to bump your heart rate up to way past 140. Now, one thing I thought that was quite silly is when I watched some videos online of people trying to do zone 2 training, they're so obsessed with this zone 2 heart rate number that when someone's heart rate goes above 140, they would like stop running and walk instead until their heart rate would come back down into zone 2. I just thought that's silly, actually. Like, just run slowly and make sure you can talk. And if your heart rate's above 140, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Like, it'll adapt eventually. You're not getting better adaptation by slowing down and walking instead of just running, jogging slowly. Like, quite silly.
That seems like a case of way overanalyzing something, and you're solving for a problem that's not actually the problem. Like the goal is to run a marathon. The goal is not to stay in zone 2 for 7 hours in a row. Like that's not, you know what I mean? And so maybe that's part of your training, but like you want to actually keep the main thing, and that is being able to run a marathon. So if that means that you're walking just to stay in zone 2, well, you're not going to, unless you plan on walking on race day, which you probably don't, then it's not really helping you. You're just like lessening one aspect of the training to improve, quote unquote, one other aspect of the training that is also probably just like less productive. Oh,
Yeah, just unrelated to the final target that you're aiming for.
right. Did you like use any heart rate monitors and stuff? Like, did you pay attention to that, or did you just more go like on the breath test? I've heard actually the breathing thing for zone 2, like the talk test, is actually a better indicator than whatever your heart rate says, because that of the way that your body is pumping the blood is better. It's a more accurate indicator because it's individual to you rather than an arbitrary estimation of your heart rate number based on your heart rate max.
I did use a heart rate monitor a little bit in the beginning, but once you get a sense of it and you do see that there's an adaptation where the heart rate goes down, then at that point it's kind of useless. Really, I thought, it's like you say, the talk test is much better. I would run and make sure that I can, I'm not huffing and puffing. I can say words and sentence without needing to stop and take a deep breath in. And that was good enough.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Can you describe how and why the fast runs are important and how you use them? And I just think that for some people listening to this, it's a little bit counterintuitive. Like, well, I'm running a marathon. Why would I need to do a hill sprint? So that doesn't really make sense on the surface. Obviously it does, but can you explain why you did that and how you use it?
Yeah, for sure. And what I find is happening when you're doing the slow runs is you're getting better at doing runs slowly, but the pace that you're able to get to isn't actually increasing all that much. Personally, that's what I find. Like, I find I can handle the run better. It feels better at the end of it, but the speed at which I'm going stays about the same because I'm trying to just keep it comfortable, first of all. That's my main goal. I'm just trying to do, 25, 30 kilometer run where the whole time I'm not hating myself. I'm just enjoying it. And in order to do that, the pace just kind of stays the same and it doesn't really improve all that much every time you do it. And then that's when the fast-paced runs come in. At that point, when you train yourself to, contract your muscles a lot faster for those fast-paced runs, or when you're doing the hill sprints, then all of a sudden, you've trained yourself to run actually faster. And then when you go back to the slow runs, somehow magically, you're like, oh, look at that. I feel like this slow run is easy for me again still, but now I have a faster pace. And that was part of the goal, right? I was trying to, initially I did the half marathon in 2 hours. I was hoping to do the full marathon in just double the time in 4 hours. I came just a little shy of that, but still fine. If I had just kept the same pace that I was doing for my slow runs, I would have taken more than 5 hours to run a marathon. So you just need to train your body how to actually be faster. Right. You need the fast twitch for your muscles to be able to get you somewhere fast, but you also need the slow runs for your heart, your cardiovascular system to adapt to feel like you can actually do it for that amount of time.
Your gait would change as well. Like you're just pushing yourself off faster. Your stride length is probably going to be a little bit longer. Your stride speed, cadence, is that the proper term there? Cadence is probably a little bit faster. And these things obviously change. And so if you're never going there and then you just try and pull it out on race day and then you're wondering, well, why didn't this feel so good? Like that's why, because you never practiced that in your training. So you've got to make sense to build those things up. It's like the same as powerlifting. You can't just train sub-maximally and then show up on meet day and then just try and a 1 rep max when you haven't actually hit a 1 rep max in months and months and months. Now, it doesn't mean you should be 1 rep maxing every single day in training. That's certainly not the way to train. But that part of the skill is as important as all of the other aspects of your training. So makes a ton of sense. Now,
just to add on to that, sorry, and then you can ask your question, but the pace at which I ran the marathon was 30 to 60 seconds faster than the slow runs that I was doing when I was just training. That's a quite per minute. That's a quite a big significant increase, and it just wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have been able to manage that for that distance had I not done any fast pace or just the hill sprints. Really, I feel like the hill sprints are just so good for that.
Yeah, and lower impact too, because less eccentric, so less chance of injury and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your nutrition through training. We'll talk about like race day in a little bit, but like talk to me about how you handle your nutrition over the last year and around your training sessions.
My nutrition doesn't really change very much, to be honest. Like, depending on what I'm doing, it's, I eat a lot of protein, mostly animal protein, mostly just, beef. And I do get, I don't know if this is really,
Dude, but hold on. Let me interject here for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I know that this is the most boring question ever to you, and I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to be surprised by anything that you say, because nutrition is so simple, and I feel like we're just smashing our head against the wall continually talking about it. So I know I can hear it in your voice that you're like, yeah, my nutrition is just I fucking eat normally. But like actually just describe that to me as if I'm a complete alien, because I think people just continually need to hear what this is. I know that it's not riveting or like some crazy, nutrition thing that you do. You just eat like a normal person, but like just actually describe that.
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, I guess if you just look at my plate, usually it's got 3 components. It's got like the big meat component, and then I usually like make a little salad for myself and some sort of carb component, whether that be rice, potatoes, something like that, or maybe I bake my bread and just have bread with my dinner. And pretty much I do that every day. And then I make my own yogurt, and I have like jars of yogurt that I supplement with all throughout the day. That's pretty much it.
riveting stuff. But again, it's important to say this because good nutrition is not complicated. It is far more simple than we've all been led to believe. Yes, it's difficult to implement that on a consistent basis and all that stuff. But like, there's no one should be surprised by the plate that you just described, and that is your plate most of the time. If you've been listening to this podcast for like any amount of time, you should not. I would be shocked if you were surprised by that. But always good to hear. Did you do anything different on your training days? Like, would you eat higher carbs? Like, would you do? I'm sure you did stuff different for race day, but would you change anything on training days because you were only training once a week? So it'd be like makes more sense.
So the main thing that I realized I really needed to do was to get my electrolytes real well, especially when you're training in the summertime. I had a couple of days that were like really, really hot days that I ran. One of the days I did a long distance run, and I was just like, oh my God, I feel completely wiped. And it was a hotter day. It was like maybe in the mid to high 20s, and not even that hot, but just hot enough for a run, for like a 3-hour, 4-hour run, where you're just like, this was a horrible experience. I want to fix this. I want to never experience this again. And so I got a hold of an electrolyte mix called LMNT. I don't know if you've heard these. They're pretty popular these days.
I use them.
Yeah, and the first time I used it, the difference that I felt, and it was another similar hot day, I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better having completed this run with this electrolyte mix than without. And then from then on, I just always used that every time I ran. The long distance runs. When it was just a 10K run, I didn't really need that. But for the long distance runs, you've got to have something. Otherwise, the drainage that you feel is like I said, the whole time I'm trying to make this a fun experience, because I'm not a big lover of running. I'm not doing this because like it's really all that important to me. I'm just like, it's for other reasons. So I just want to make sure that I continue to do this by keeping it fun. And having that electrolyte mix as part of my, before I run, I just would down that real quick. That made a huge difference for me.
So you would drink it, like one packet of it pre-run? Would you take any with you on the run in water bottles that you carried with you or anything like that, or no?
No, because I didn't want to carry a water bottle in me because it's such a hassle to do that. Yeah. The only thing I would carry with me for the really long distance runs was a couple of like apples or something along those lines to give me a little bit of extra energy midway as I was feeling tired. But I worked out a route that I would run where I had a bunch of water stations throughout the route that I could drink water from. So I didn't have to bring a bottle with me. So I would just down everything right beforehand, and I'd have a couple apples with me at the halfway point. I would like maybe eat one and then save one for like the last quarter of it maybe.
I have 2 questions. One, why did you choose apples? That feels like not the most convenient fruit to eat while you're while you're running. Like feel like I'd be smashing my teeth into it, trying to bite into it.
Funny question. It's just whatever was available. Like kids love apples. We always have them kicking around. So that's what I took.
And second question, you trusted like the city water fountains to just drink from? Are you sure you're okay now? You didn't turn into a monster or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or anything like that?
Right there. They say the dose makes the poison, right? So it wasn't that much. It wasn't that much water. It's just enough to get
enough to wet your liver and get through it. Yeah. Fair enough. Makes sense. I mean, I think the electrolyte things are good. I think they're way overblown, like all supplements are, and people use them way too often for the wrong reasons. You're doing a 30-minute, 45-minute workout at the gym at like a 7 out of 10 intensity. Like you probably don't need in an air-conditioned gym to boot. Like you probably don't need extra electrolytes, but you're doing a long run where you're sweating a ton. Outside, like, yes, that's when those things matter, obviously.
Like I said, the 10K run didn't need it at all. Like it was fine without it. But for the long 20 plus, you've got to have something.
How long is a 10K run taking you on your training runs?
An hour.
Yeah. So like an hour, that seems like it makes sense, right? An hour's worth of sweating, assuming it's not crazy hot. That makes sense, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other supplements that you used or took in training?
Yeah. The other one that I used was so last year when I did the half marathon, I just used a ketone ester on race day. This time I knew I was going to use it on race day. I wanted to get a little bit of like experience using it during training as well. So there's this one called Ketone IQ, and it's a ketone ester sports drink. I was able to buy a large bottle that lasted me both throughout my training and on race day. And man, ketone esters are the most bitter, gross tasting things in the world. If you can handle them, go for it, because they work extremely well. But if you can't handle bitter taste, like it was bad. I try to take double the dose that I normally would take during training runs for the actual race day. And it was just so bad, I couldn't. I had to spit it out.
Now, how much do you think that affects you, and what is the feeling like of taking that?
Yeah, totally. So I have a little bit of experience being able to describe the difference, because I had a run where I just didn't take anything. I had a run where I just took the electrolyte mix, and I had a run where I took the electrolyte mix and the ketone ester sports drink, and it just seems like you have like this effortless source of energy that you can dig into, that makes it so that you never have to worry about whether you're going to get tired. Just that feeling of, you're never going to get that feeling of tiredness that makes you want the race or the run to be over.
Right.
It's hard to describe it any way other than that, because it's very subtle. But at the same time, you're thinking, I should be feeling tired by now, but I'm not.
Right. Which is different than something that you take to go to the gym to lift, like a pre-workout or some sort of caffeine-based supplement, even if it's just coffee, where like you're trying to get jacked up for like an hour, but the ketone ester might not do that. It's not going to have this like gigantic pop for you, but it's just going to sustain you for a long amount of time, which is obviously what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. From what I understand, actually, the weird thing is about the ketone esters is they increase your blood ketone levels for only a short amount of time, but the peak at which they increase it is significantly larger than, let's say, if someone buys a ketone salt supplement. So there's a big difference. There's ketone salts and ketone esters. Ketone salts, supposedly, they will have a longer acting effect, but the spike at which they act is much smaller. And then the ketone ester is supposedly the reverse of that, where it's a shorter acting but a larger spike. But that's just in your blood. What happens to the ketones after they go from your blood to where they're supposed to go? There's, just because you're not detecting it doesn't mean it's not doing something. It's doing a lot.
Right. Yeah, different tools for different outcomes. Now, on that note, I know that like gear and stuff that you use is also a big thing in the running community. So talk to me about the shoes you're wearing and any other like gear stuff that you were using and how you navigated that throughout the year.
Sure. Yeah. So I was not very smart. And I did the half marathon last year in these shoes that have almost no cushioning. And that was fine. Like I said,
Was that on purpose, or is that just like you just never really thought much about it? Or were you trying to like barefoot Margo it? Yeah.
And I mean, it's like I have a pair of running shoes, so I'm going to use them.
Right.
And then I never had troubles because it was only 21 kilometers, the max that I ever ran, and that was fine. And I got good adaptation from that. I have strong feet, but when you get to 25 plus kilometers, it's just a different beast. That was like the biggest takeaway. It's just like there's a certain distance at which things change completely, and you just have to know that and be aware of that and adjust your behavior accordingly.
Sure.
So once I started going 25 kilometers plus, I realized the shoes I had were just no good. So I went and bought a much better set of shoes. I think they're just New Balance shoes. New Balance, they're specifically for marathons. I went and talked to the sales lady who was there, and she gave me a handful of ones that were a good fit for a marathon run, and I just picked the one that had the widest toe box. I have wide feet,
Sure.
So just for the best, comfort and feel. And then once I had those, I did feel a lot better running with them, and it's completely different. It's almost like the shoes were pushing me. Honest to God.
Did they have those carbon plates in the soles? Were they those kind of shoes?
They didn't have the carbon plates, but it's quite a bit of cushioning in the bottom.
The bounce, yeah.
Yeah, and it just feels like it's pushing you forward with minimal effort compared to what I was doing before. I was like, this is so much better. Thank God that I switched. And I can't tell you much more about the shoes than that. I just know like they fit me well. They're meant for marathon, and they had a decent amount of cushioning. But I found even with the excess cushioning and the better feel and the more comfort, it didn't make an impact on my knee. It would still 25 kilometers into the run, it would slowly start to creep in, that little pain in the knee, and then eventually it would get worse to the point where I would have to just start walking.
Right. So good to know, and I think this is a good note to make for people, is that I know people who get into running and then they spend hours and hours researching the best shoes and the best stuff. And to your point, it definitely matters, have a decent pair of shoes, but you don't need, unless you're going to the Olympics, you don't need the best pair of shoes that are you don't need to spend hours and hours trying out different pairs of shoes and run 100 kilometers in these shoes and test them out. You probably don't need that. It's going to make a difference, but not that much of a difference. So get a decent pair of shoes and then just move on and worry more about your actual training, which is actually going to move the needle a ton more.
100%.
So the knee was an issue. Any other issues that came up during training at all? Any other roadblocks, obstacles, anything like that?
Yeah, so I was initially thinking that the biggest obstacle was going to be a potential injury that would slow me down from being able to prepare for this. But really, the thing that made me lose the most amount of time from training was viral illnesses. Something we don't think about much, but at the beginning of the year, I just kept getting illness after illness right after each other. And that really took out a lot of time from me being able to get back to the shape that I was at last year when I finished a half marathon. And so once I went through that experience of losing so much time to viral illnesses and not being able to train, I was much more sensitive to when a new illness was about to approach. So, and having that sensitivity and that understanding of, I feel like I'm going to get sick from early on makes a big difference in what you can do to prevent that and dampen that illness from coming on so that you actually don't lose so much time. So actually, I feel like I've got a really good plan now for when a viral illness is coming on for what to do to mitigate that and minimize the impact so I can continue to do the training as much as possible.
So share the plan, man. It's a cold with flu season. What was the plan? And people use your brains. We're not doctors, whatever. This will work for John. Just use your brain. Use your brain.
Yeah, totally. So the most important thing is what I already said, is just having that sensitivity and knowing the first day when something goes wrong and doing something about that. Because if you think about a viral illness, it's viral particles replicating and replicating and replicating and making like doubling and doubling in volume, right? And then infecting the rest of your body. So if you can catch that when it's not increased in volume so much, and use your immune system with the support of whatever supplements you're using to dampen it, you're gonna be much more successful than if you like on the third day you finally notice, oh, something's wrong. Well, by that time it's probably over.
Right.
Over, but probably you can't have as much of an impact on it.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Then the second, if it's a viral illness, high likelihood that it's gonna be some sort of a cold, right? A cold virus. And one thing I use to combat cold viruses is these zinc lozenges. So there's this company called Life Extensions, and they make these lozenges that are huge. They're like the size of your the nail of your thumb, and like quite a bit in depth as well. And you put those in your mouth, and you let the lozenge slowly melt, and it takes like half an hour to go to dissolve completely. And I find these to be very powerful at just killing the cold as quickly as possible. Zinc is known to be a reverse transcriptase inhibitor, which most common colds use a reverse transcriptase to copy their RNA, I think, to infect different cells. Mm-hmm. So I use that in conjunction. There's one other one that I started using, so I'm not quite sure about the effectiveness of it, but what's it called? It is a oregano oil. So oregano oil, I used to use this. They have like these things where you can drop little droplets to the back of your throat. And again, the taste is so horrible that I just refuse to use it.
Yeah.
But I have found that they have these ones with a gel capsule. So you don't have to have the taste. It just goes down. But you still got to be careful, because once it goes down, then your stomach acids open it up. And when they open it up, it has a chance of like coming back, and you're just feeling that horrible taste. So you gotta have something that you eat right after it to push it down so it doesn't come back up.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely true for it. So those are your two things. Do you know the dosage on that zinc lozenge that you use?
I can have it and take a look at it real quick.
We can people can Google it, but one of those. But getting some zinc in you, especially if you're not regularly taking zinc, like for me, I know that zinc is something that I take regularly, and I'll like triple the dosage when I'm getting sick. That's all I'll do. But yeah, so those two things. Anything else?
I guess like when I supplement with vitamin D quite significantly. So I take like 10,000 units per day. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm, especially in the winter, in the summer, I probably don't. But if I do get sick in the summer, I will start supplementing with vitamin D, and I will take a very high dose. I might take like 50,000 to 100,000 units on the first day to really hit it with something hard. So that's one thing. I do take like multiple grams of vitamin C throughout the day as well. And then I just drink a lot of tea and bread, butter, and honey.
Yep, that's pretty much the formula. That's very similar to what I do, and like I almost never get sick. So and like you, it's like even if you do, it's like, okay, I feel it coming on. This is going to be over by the end of today. This is not going to be like, oh, I feel it coming on. Let me just like let this happen and be sick for a week. Like the other thing that I add to that is sauna. If you have access to a sauna, that's been super helpful. Or a thing that I do, because I don't always have access to a sauna, is like just do really light cardio, even if it's just a walk, but like wear sweatpants, a hoodie, like make yourself sweat and get really hot and try to sweat it out. Like I know some of these things like maybe stuff your grandmother would have told you to do, and like, old wives' tales, but like there's a lot of truth in those things. And so if it works, maybe we don't exactly know how it works or why it works or all these things. It's not super scientifically founded, but like has no downsides, and it works for a lot of people. So, maybe just give it a try, but also, use your brain.
Well, you're recreating a fever basically, right? Like your body's natural response to being ill is create a fever so that you can fight it off. So you're just doing this in a more controlled way by either going to a sauna, raising your body temperature, or just doing light, cardio workout. That's definitely going to raise your body temperature as well.
Now, do you think that because your training volume increased, because you were running more, do you think that contributed to you getting sick a little bit more often than usual, or was it just a string of bad luck?
It was in the beginning of the year, so it was just like, January, February. That's just the time that you're going to get sick more often anyway.
Plus you have young kids, so that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And Anything else that you want to talk about in as far as like the training leading up to it, or you want to get into race day now?
Yeah, totally. Well, let's talk about a little bit more about the training because I used these speed trainers. They're called Pro Pulse speed trainers, which I bought from David Weck's website. And so it's a little bit hard to explain. So my wife made fun of me by calling them my running maracas, because it's literally just a container, a plastic container, an ergonomic plastic container that you can hold in your hand. And it's got these pellets inside, and you can just basically shake it and the pellets will hit the top or the bottom of the container. And so the way I used it is while I was doing my short 10K runs, it would be just insane to use it for the long distance runs. But for the short 10K runs and when I was doing hill sprints, it was perfect for that. And so last time we had this conversation, we talked about the double down pulse that I learned from David Weck. And just as a way to refresh people's memories, the double down pulse is when you're running, your hands are going forwards and backwards, right? As you're running. But what I've learned from David Weck is as your hands are going forwards and backwards, you can add a down pulse with both hands as you're going forwards and backwards. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Like help me out a little bit if
it's like you're pushing the ground down with your hands as you are propelling yourself up and forward.
Exactly. And so what that does is it spikes the ground with an additional force just as you're landing so that you get a rebound back from that force that helps you get a little bit more vertical time in the air so that the horizontal propulsion is maximized and you go faster. Now you can take advantage of this even further by holding these speed propulsor trainer things that I got. And it basically, not only are you now spiking the ground with extra force, but there's these pellets that are now hitting the inside of the container. And that is forcing this rebound effect to happen even faster. And it just feels amazing. It's hard to explain it any better than that, to be honest with you. I need to talk to David Weck a little bit more to like get a full sense of what exactly I'm doing. But I can tell you that it's easier to run up a hill or up a set of stairs with those things than without them, even though it's like maybe 12 ounces per container that you're holding. So you got, let's say, 24 ounces extra weight in your hands, but it feels easier because you're spiking the ground. You're getting this free force of pushing you back up, and then you can really just focus on bounding yourself forward as you're doing that.
I've seen them in use, like on social media and from you and from whatever. So I think it's easier to understand when you watch a video of someone using it and actually demonstrating it. But to just to add on, and maybe this will help make sense. When you run or when you walk, you hit the ground and you push off the ground. And because of the laws of physics, the ground pushes you back. That's how we move. If you push the ground harder, the ground pushes you back harder, equal and opposite force. So the harder you can press into the ground, with the more force you can press into the ground rather, and the speed at which you can do that, which combine to create more force, the greater it will push you back and the faster that you will move. So by using these, the Pro Pulse, whatever they're called, it's helping you with that slight additional weight plus the actual movement of those pellets, I believe, plus probably just the tangible reminder to like force your hands down, like shrug, like if you can watch the video, I'm maybe doing a little bit more extreme than you would when you're running, but like force your hands down, push your feet into the ground, and then that'll push you forward. So it's a combination of those things. But I think to sum it all up, like in one sentence, it's really just helping clean up your running technique. That's what it's doing.
Yeah, I think it is helping clean up the running technique because of the audio kind of cue for having a more rhythmic run.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there is a little bit more to it than just the rhythm that it creates in the impact of the forces of the pellets inside the container as they hit the ground. It has this impact where your connective tissue recoils from having felt that, and you get a faster response from your body because you're able to feel this recoil.
Right. Makes sense to me. But again, hard to conceptualize, I think, for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that after using those, you noticed that you like we're able to mimic that style of running to some degree, even without using them? Maybe not exactly, but a little bit better.
No, absolutely. And that goes back to that feeling that rhythm. Once you can hear the rhythm, then you can feel it, and it becomes a second nature, and you don't need to hear it anymore to get the right, because you got to really time those things just right, because what you're doing is you're spiking the ground just as your foot touches down, so that you can divide it into land, load, launch. So you're landing your foot, you're loading the ground. Just as you're loading the ground, that's when you got to spike down the ground with your hand, so that when you're launching, you have that extra force launching you forward.
Right. Just so that all the forces basically are acting in the same direction and similar magnitudes. It would be counterproductive if you were like launching off your foot, or your foot was already in the air, but then you're pushing down at the same time. Now your body's just moving all in different, you're going to be way less efficient that way. Yeah, wasting energy and slower.
Yeah, you got to have ground contact when you're spiking down, or else it's pointless. You're not going to actually have any rebound effect.
Right. To someone who's not going to use those, I think this just speaks to the fact that like running sounds really simple, and like, it's not new and people are into and all that stuff, but like you can probably make a ton of progress in your marathon efforts by paying attention to various aspects of your actual running technique. Your ability to move efficiently through space for a long period of time is gigantic, in addition to just being able to move for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that, like we said before, there's 4 hours. Let's say if you're doing a marathon, you might have to manage 4 hours. During those 4 hours, you're going to have to implement different techniques for running to manage the different environments that you're running through, and also to manage the different states that your body is in. Because I can guarantee you, at the start of the race, you're going to be in a completely different race than when you a different place than when you are in the middle and at the very end.
What do you mean by that? Like, well, what happened for you?
Well, just the fact that like for me, simple example, the knee was just shambles, right? It's not in shambles, but my right knee was in significant amount of pain, and I just I want to say at least a half-hour period there, my knee was in so much pain that I couldn't run the same way that I was running at the very start of the race. I just had to. So like I said, my right side, I'm right-sided, right hand and right leg probably. So I was using my right side probably as the power side. Well, once my knee was in so much pain, guess what? I wasn't using my right side as my power side. It was my left side that was my power side. And I was just going to my right just to, place my weight down on that side as balanced as possible to minimize the impact, and then going quickly to the other side to push off.
Right.
So that was a technique a different technique than what I was using at the start of the race. And actually it was different from the very end of the race, because by the end that pain had subsided and I was able to use the sides a little bit more equally.
How did that pain go away? Was that just by adjusting the technique? And so like you alleviated some of the stress and the pressure from it, and then it went away and you got back to it, or like what happened there?
So combination most likely, but if I had to guess, the most impactful thing would have been that capsule of ibuprofen that I took midway through the race.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So funny story, because I had all these instances of training where I felt my right knee in pain. I was like, what am I going to do about this? I don't think this is going away. So as the race day is approaching, I was like, maybe I'll just have some, pain meds with me and I'll just deal with it like that. So I put a couple of gel capsules in my pocket without like a container or anything. And, 25, 26 kilometers into the race, still a third to go. All of a sudden I feel this excruciating pain in my knee. I go to grab the gel capsules and one of them had almost completely leaked over the other one.
Nuts. I'm sure that felt nuts on your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so one, not only that, but one was almost full, maybe like more than 3/4 full. One was only a third left. So I took the 3/4 full one. I'm in so much pain. There's no water station nearby. I'm like, whatever, I'll just swallow it. Pop it to the back of my throat. Immediately I start coughing because it's stinging the back of my throat, because it's covered in the other gel capsules, like excretion. And it's not meant to, be tasted, because it just like tastes horrible and it burns the back of my throat. So as my knee's in horrible pain, I'm like coughing up like a lung, being like, I can't. But it was good a little bit, because it distracted me from the pain and the need to like focusing on my throat and like not, not choking.
That's definitely one strategy.
So part of it, like I said, I took the capsule about 15, 20 minutes later. I think it kicked in. The pain was starting to subside, and it's also just like staying positive, talking to myself, just being grateful that I had the opportunity to run to begin with. Having that mindset throughout the entire thing, I think, is what propelled me to get beyond whatever the mental battles I was going through.
Was that more difficult than it sounds like your knee was a significant issue, but aside from the knee, like, did you feel tired? Did you feel like, was it physically difficult other than your knee?
Yeah, totally. So last time when I did the half marathon, for my last kilometer, I sprinted as fast as I could for that last kilometer. I was just passing everybody, but just tens of, maybe 20, more than 20 people that I passed for the last kilometer. It was the pace for that last kilometer that I ran was more than 1 minute faster than any other kilometer for that half marathon. And once I finished, I had nothing left in the tank. But that just shows me, like, if we take 20 kilometers and 60 seconds faster in that 1 kilometer, that means I could have done 3 seconds faster, perhaps, for the entire race. Just
In theory.
Yeah, in theory. This time around, when I got to that last kilometer, everybody was passing me. I was just happy. I was just happy that I could keep going. I was just happy that I had enough energy to make it to the finish line. Just like very happy for the people who were passing me. Like, it's great that they have the energy to do that. I did not care whatsoever. I didn't have it in me at all to push for that last kilometer.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Everyone's going to have the, better and worse days and different things, but it's about finishing. You didn't, again, not going to the Olympics, so you're not trying to like set a world record or anything. Your goal was to finish it without any injuries, and you did that. So like that was the thing, and you should be proud of that. Now, what are some other things you did on race day, like nutrition? I know the supplementation, like talking about how your whole setup for race day.
Yeah, so I just had the same thing with the LMNT electrolyte mix and the Ketone IQ, the Ketone Ester sports drink. I had those prior to the race. I always like to have a spoonful of honey I added some extra salt to that as well.
Yeah.
I have that, and then that's it. They just went off on a run, and then they have the stations set
So
up.
you didn't actually eat anything before?
Okay, so thanks for reminding me. I did eat a breakfast. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what I ate.
Okay, so nothing special or calculated.
I know it was just probably like eggs and on toast.
Sure. That's interesting. Did you do anything like the night before? Did you no nutrition planning here at all?
I guess you could say I did a little bit of a carb load the day before. I think we had, I think we had pasta the day before. So yeah, like, I'm very simple when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, I don't think about it too much. I just trust the process. I knew that I trained enough. I knew I trained enough not to get what my original goal was 2 hours, but I knew it was going to be just a little bit faster than that. So it just, as a joke, I was like, my goal is 420.
Right.
So then I had a little bit of a carbo load by having, pasta the day before. The next morning I had, like I said, I think it was just eggs on toast. And then my supplements is what I had. And then on race day, they have stations set up where you can have water or electrolyte drinks. And I minimized how much I drank for the first hour and a half. But then after that, I was just like, whenever I feel like I need it, go for it. And then they had specific stations where you have these carbohydrate gel capsule thing. Not a capsule. I don't know what it is, but
It's like those gel pack things.
Gel packs.
They look disgusting, but
they look disgusting. They taste disgusting. They have weird names. The one that they had was GU, so goo, I guess. That was the name. I hated like consuming it, but I knew I had to. So I think I ended up having maybe 4 or 5 stations only. It wasn't that many stations where it was available, but every station I just made sure I got some. And that's pretty much it. Nothing out of the ordinary, no secret plan or anything like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Again, it seems to me like I think you should, like, for a race day, like for something like that where you're trying to perform, you want to adjust your nutrition a little bit accordingly. But I would estimate that I think people think about it way too much. unless again, you're going for a very specific time at a very high level of performance and, you're trying to qualify for something, like probably just doesn't really matter that much. Like eat healthy, eat what you normally eat so that you're not having any digestive issues and like you feel fine. Like that's probably the number one most important thing. Like don't eat, if, I don't know, pick a food, like whatever it is that like upsets your stomach, don't eat that. So you got to like shit your pants during the race, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, if you're just trying to like finish and go out there and have a good time and be happy with it, like you probably don't need to like do a whole ton to your nutrition.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So like I keep coming back to this, it's a 4-hour race minimum, right? And so you got a lot of stuff to manage. And one of the things you got to manage in that 4 hours is like your gastro, like you're talking about. So make sure you are, so that's, I had
empty.
to make sure. Yeah. I made sure I was empty. I went to the bathroom, I think 3 times before the race. And I didn't, like you said, I didn't eat anything that was going to, that I'm sensitive to. There's just a big component of running the race can manage your gastric issues.
Yeah. Again, makes a ton of sense. Obviously, like, more calculated nutrition would help performance more. Like I'm not trying to downplay nutrition and like that's not important. It obviously does matter at like elite levels, but if you're just trying to like go out there and finish a marathon and feel good, like it's just not going to make that much of a difference. It's just make yourself feel good and kind of like that's it, right?
Yeah, it's about the broad strokes, about the actual training that you did and about the mental space that you're in. Right. Can you make those be congruent and harmonized to make you, complete your goal on race day? All the other stuff is a distraction, if anything.
On the mental side of things, were there any additional mental practices, mantras, breath work, anything you did on or leading up to race day to help you out with this?
What I found during the training is when I stopped running, when I would just slow down and do a walk, I found it very difficult mentally to get back to running at a decent pace again. So what I realized is that on race day, I had to just keep going and not stop if I wanted to meet my goal of finishing, in 4 hours, 20 minutes, let's say. So when the knee pain started on race day and I still had a third of the race to go, I was like, if you want to finish this race, you have to keep running. You can slow down as much as you need to, but keep running, don't walk. So I made this deal with myself at the very start of the knee pain. I was like, slow down as much as you need to, but don't stop because you know what's going to happen when you stop. You're just going to want to quit. So for nearly an hour and a half, I kept mantraing to myself, just keep going, don't stop. Just keep going, don't stop. I just kept saying that over and over again. And then if I wasn't saying that, then I was trying to think about how grateful I am for all the things that are happening around me right now. How it was like a really nice, beautiful day. How I was just like, at least my other leg is in great shape so I can use it. I was just like thinking about like my kids were waiting for me to see me for like the last kilometer. I was thankful for that. So anything I could think of that was a good thing that I could be thankful for, I was trying to focus my mind on that so that I wouldn't be focusing on the pain, and then just making that deal with myself. If I stop, I know I'm not going to want to keep going. So just keep going.
It makes a lot of sense. And that is it very much sounds like a race day type of mindset and not a months of training type of mindset. Like it's okay to, not ideal, obviously, but like if you're on race day or performance day and you're like, you don't feel great, you have pain, whatever, it's like, well, I'm not encouraging anyone to get injured, but like if you get injured on that day, like, well, this is what you were training for. So like, let's just leave it all out here. If you get injured in training and you're just pushing through, grinding through actual pain, not discomfort, well, then you're just not going to even make it to race day. So like, there's a difference in like listening to your body and like knowing when, okay, this hurts and I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm just going to push through it. And if it's worse and it takes me 6 weeks to recover from this, then so be it. But you don't want that to happen, 2 months out. Like that's not the time to push through that pain. That's the time to stop and address your pain and deal with it accordingly. And then so that on race day, you can actually make it there as healthy as possible and then push through, right?
Absolutely. And damn it. Sorry. I had to follow a point to what you were saying and it totally skipped my mind. I think what I was trying to say is on race day, I was like, I knew this was my chance, and I didn't want to blow it.
Right.
I knew I didn't want to come back and try this one more time. So, so I kept pushing it, but at the same time, I was also paying attention to how it actually felt. And what I could tell was when I slowed down a little bit, it was feeling less bad. And what I could also tell was that there was no swelling. So if there's no swelling, that made me more confident that there was not an acute injury that was just going to get worse and worse. It made me think that most likely this is an overuse thing, just like before. I'm running 25 plus kilometers, max 42 here. So of course I'm going to overuse my joints, and I'm okay with that. I signed up for this. So let's just keep going.
Right. The point of it was to overuse your body. Like that's exactly the whole thing you signed up for. So that's a great point to make. Anything else about race day?
Yeah, no, I think we covered all the main points that I wanted to. I guess. So one thing I didn't mention was one of the other smaller obstacles that I dealt with was when I was training. Like I said, it was a slow runs, and you're significantly increasing your pace when you're doing the race. So during the first half of the race, not that early on, I think it was only like maybe 14, 15 kilometers in. All of a sudden, because I'm running so much faster than what I'm used to, I started feeling stitches on the right side of my gut or the left side of my gut. And I was like, this is not at all what happened during training. This is new. But when I was checking my pace, I was like actually going a little bit faster than I should have been. And you get caught up in it. Everyone's going faster in the beginning, and you're just like, you want to be with everybody. You're excited. And you still have a large store of energy that you're tapping into, so you go a little faster than what you should. And so I realized I was going a little faster, so I slowed down just enough that I still felt the pain in my side, but it was significantly reduced. And about 4 to 5 kilometers after the pain started, it subsided, it went away, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. Little did I know, only like 5 or 6 kilometers later, I would have like my knee blow up on me, but at least I had that little period in between.
It keeps you on your toes a little bit too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do anything to get rid of those stitches, or did you just like time and just slowing down? Other than slowing down, did you do anything else to help with that?
That was it. Just slow down and wait it out.
Yeah, makes sense. But again, one of these things where it's like, if that's the worst of your problems, like that's a pretty good day, I think. On race day. But this is why you train at higher speeds, to get more used to some parts of the event.
Yeah,
in reality, right? Which is unique to very long distance endurance events, because you can't just do the event. Again, powerlifting, like you can do your 1 rep max squat in the gym, and it's exactly the same as it's going to be on competition day, minus the crowd and adrenaline and whatever. But like it's the same thing. You can train that multiple times. You can't just run marathons like every week and then just show up on race day and then run. Like that's not how you train for that type of thing. So it makes sense. But you got to find ways to like stimulate pieces of those events so that things as little as possible surprise you on the day of the race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was quite a surprise, but luckily I was able to handle it. And yeah, sometimes just got to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's good to have so one thing actually that now that I think about it, it's good to have like some sort of tracking device on you on race day, so that you are able to stick to the plan that you set for yourself. And that was one of the reasons, I think we talked about this a little bit online, one of the reasons why I was so unsuccessful 10 years ago for my first try is I didn't have that ability to track myself and stick to a plan. I just went balls to the wall fast as I could because I had a ridiculous goal that I had set for myself. And then, surprise, just couldn't maintain that for the entirety of it. So it's good to have some sort of tool that helps you track things and let you know when you've, pushed it a little bit and you can come back.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And especially given the heightened emotions of race day, helps to have something objective to keep you honest. Like you can tell yourself that you're feeling great all you want, and maybe you are for now, but you know that like based on the watch, they're like, oh, I'm going, 15% faster than I should be. Like this, I feel fine now, but like it's not going to pan out very good. So I need to rein it back in and be logical about it and be intelligent so that you can actually accomplish your goal.
Yeah, totally. Like the first half of the marathon, I was running at about a 5.5 minute per kilometer race, which is significantly way faster than anything I'd ran before. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, like I know this right now feels good and it feels like I could go forever like this, but I know that's a lie too, because because I've done this before and I know I can't do that. So
Right.
is a good way to remind myself to slow back down.
Yeah, makes sense. So given all this, are you running another marathon this year?
I don't, you know what? It's like, I joke like it's like kids. At first I thought I just wanted one, but now I have two. So I don't want to, make a judgment too early. I'm still processing this one a little bit. And I find like it was too much of a mental challenge. I like physical challenges. So maybe I'll do another half marathon because that felt like the right distance to really challenge myself physically. And I try to go, faster and faster for a half marathon. I don't see myself doing another full marathon, but it's too early to tell. And who knows? I'll probably get bored like down the line. I'm still so young.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, personally, I have no interest in running a marathon or training to run a marathon. So, I get why you wouldn't want to do it. And I think that to me, it seems like exactly what you just said. Running the marathon is a bit more of a mental challenge. It's not super exciting to you or to me as like a physical feat. Like now you know that you can do it, you've done it, and like sure you could try and go faster, but it's more of like just like getting over it and just to say that you've done it. Now that you've checked that box, like, hey, I did this, you're probably more interested in like something that is a little bit more performance related to you rather than just doing it to do it. And probably a half marathon or, some of those obstacle race type things if we're sticking with endurance sports or just jiu-jitsu in general, but are probably a little bit more interesting to you because you can dig into a little bit more of the performance side of things. And it's not worrying about like, oh, how is my knee gonna this and what are all these things I got to manage? It's more just like, how can I just like push this as fast as I can or as hard as I can?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is the time commitment for the training. I just don't want to do that again.
Yeah, makes sense. So like if you're spending that many hours a week training, it's like how many more interesting things could you do than just run,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's only so many podcasts you can listen to while you're running.
Yeah, before you run out of all of them, you're like, well, no one posted a new episode today, so. Yeah, man. I think that's all great. I think this is like all super helpful stuff for people who are very much into running and who want to have a little bit more of a smarter, more logical, more calculated path to completing their marathon for the first time or improving their marathon this year or any time after that. So this has been super helpful to tell for people. But anything else that you wanted to mention?
I guess the only last few things I'll say is make sure if you want to run a marathon, make sure you create a plan for yourself, write it down, and then stick to the plan and trust the process. There's many times throughout this cycle where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. I don't know if I'm gonna meet my goal. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this without hurting myself. But I just stuck to the plan and kept going despite all these things that made me question it. And then it worked out. It worked out for me. And so, yeah, if you don't trust it, then you're more likely to quit. And then if you quit, you're definitely not going to meet your goal. So have a plan and trust it. And then the other point I want to make is, like I said before, there's no one right way to run. There's the interaction between you, your state, and the environment in which you're running that can help dictate which are the most appropriate ways to run. But yeah, everybody's body is a little bit different. We got different sized, length bones and all that. So whatever works for one person is not necessarily going to work for you. You have to try out different ways, styles of running, and see what's appropriate for you in what state, in what environment. And then, yeah, the last thing is just my way of doing it was a minimalist style. If you want to do 25 plus kilometer runs, you need a little bit more volume of mileage under your legs.
For sure. Most people don't have the amount of time under their belt of training in general as you do, and the variety of training and the actual specifics of training. Like you're a very good mover let's say that as like a kind of a blanket term, but you've paid a lot of attention to moving well, paying attention to your feet and being mobile and strong and flexible and athletic and all of these things. Most people, even if you're just a lifter, like you haven't spent that time doing that. So yes, what you did is minimal, but it, like to your earlier point, like it worked for you because of all of the things that you've done and the things that you know. But like if you're anyone else, like you probably need more training and you probably need to like get in contact. Like when John's talking about different styles of running and stuff like that, if you don't know what those are, it's hard to figure it out by just trying shit. You can, it's just gonna be slow and like pretty difficult to figure that out. Like you'll save yourself a lot of time by getting in touch with someone who has tried all those options and they can tell you like, okay, based on your XYZ, stats and preferences and whatever, try this or try these 3 options. Let me know which one is better, rather than just trying to like, run around and figure it out on your own, because there's so much training you have to do and only so much time you have to do it that you might waste weeks and months of training incorrectly and actually poorly just by trying to figure out what the heck's going on with your body.
Yeah, it's a question of how much time you got on your hands, right? If you've got an infinite amount of time, then yeah, perhaps you can figure it out on your own. If you have a set deadline, then perhaps it might be better for you to find extra help who can guide you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, very cool stuff. I'm always excited to see what you've got cooking coming up next and whatever goals and stuff that you have planned. And so hopefully we'll have an exciting update on whatever's coming next soon. But is there anything else that you do have coming up outside of your own training and aspirations that you wanted to let people know about today?
No. Did you want to talk about your goal a little bit? Touch on it?
Let's just very quickly. And because we got to kind of close off here.
Sure.
My goal was just about like getting shredded, and that was it. I obviously didn't do that. You guys can't see my body, but I'll just tell you, didn't happen. I didn't get worse. I did get a little bit leaner. I got injured a couple times too, like I don't say very, but like significant enough injuries that like knocked me off. Now that shouldn't be an excuse because, I can still monitor my nutrition. I can still like do a lot of things. So I didn't gain any weight. I did get leaner, but not as lean as I wanted to. The injury thing is kind of an excuse, but it is like my reason. I just like stop caring and I start caring about healing my injury. So my goal changes in that, right? I'm like, I don't care about, and it's because I didn't care about getting that lean that much. It was just something that like I kind of want to do, but it wasn't like, I must do this by this date. It was just like, yeah, let's just like, sure, let's do it. So then when the circumstances change and I get injured, I'm like, no, well, who cares about that? I didn't really care about it that much anyways. This is definitely taking a back seat. Now I need to focus on healing this injury and like getting myself right here, because that is like always number one. And I unfortunately just get injured way too often for seemingly no reason. But I'm working on trying to figure out why that is and how to make that stop happening so much, as I have been for my whole life.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'll mention is that getting very lean is very difficult. It's much more difficult than like your typical weight loss journey. If you're 25% body fat and you're trying to get down to 15% body fat as a man, physically, like that's not that difficult. It's hard to, the consistency, all those stuff. But like mechanically, the things you got to do, like it's not that hard to do. But going from 12 to 9, like now we're talking about a lot more difficulty because you've got a lot less wiggle room. There's, very few, if any, cheat meals. You don't have as much room with your calories. Your steps got to be high every single day. Like there's just less room for error. You got to be more dialed more of the time. So the consistency and intensity has to be higher on all fronts, and it happens slower and you feel shittier while you're doing it. Like when you're going from 25 to 15%, you're probably feeling better as you're losing weight. Joints feel better. Your sleep is improved. Like everything, you feel better as that's happening. When you're getting close to 10 or lower than 10%, you feel shitty. You feel worse. You don't feel better at that point. And so
do you think the case could be made that it's not actually worth your while to reach for that level of leanness, and maybe perhaps 10 to 15% body fat is more optimal range to be in? Because otherwise you're at that point of diminishing returns. Like you said, you have to try way harder to get down. And if you're not feeling better, what's the point?
So yes and no. If I was not in the profession that I'm in, it would almost certainly not be worth it. I think that it will bring about, one, it's something that I want to do still as like just to say that I did it and like just to do it again and kind of like stay there and whatever, or stay closer to there. I think it will also bring about some help professionally, or some benefits professionally, which, just better photos, better, look at me kind of fucking stupid shit that like actually works. And I say that because that's how I genuinely feel. I hate that it works, but it does work. If I just like look leaner and post a pic, and like, especially on Twitter, I know that you're on Twitter, but like on Twitter, it's more like this like post physique thing.
Physique, yeah.
Yeah, spelled Fizeek, right? And it's like kind of like just, online trolling stuff, but like it's also kind of legit too, right? Like I don't want to buy clothes from a guy who's dressed like a bum, right? I don't want to buy fitness from a guy who's like doesn't look super fit. And I think I look like I'm in shape, and I definitely look like a workout, and performance is good and all that stuff, but would it help me if I was just like a little bit leaner, a little bit more jacked, a little bit stronger? Of course it would. So I want to do it for that. I want to do it just to say that I did it one more time before kids. And I think it'll have some professional benefits. So in that sense, yes, it's kind of like more difficult than it should be, kind of make me feel a little shittier than it should. But because of those extra benefits, I do think it's still worth it. I just have to, if I stay healthy, and knock on wood, if I stay healthy, I should be able to do it. Like I don't really have I don't have an excuse. Like it being hard is not an excuse to me. Like the injury thing and like getting sidetracked with stuff that is like more important to me in the moment is the actual reason for me. But like assuming I stay healthy, like I should be able to do it. And part of my goal also was like to get back to some strength numbers that I had when I was at like a much heavier weight. And I haven't tested it this week, but I'm pretty much there, and I can tell by like the rep ranges that I'm working at, like estimate why one rep max and feel how I'm feeling. And so I'm like 30 pounds less than I was at those heavy weights when I hit those previous PRs. And again, haven't exactly tested it, but I'm right there. I'm very close. If I give myself maybe another 3 weeks and just like test the 1RMs and get used to like the heavier percentage loads, then I think I'm right there. So that is also part of the goal that I wanted to hit. And so at least I've hit that. So I can't say that it's a total failure, but for me, that's pretty much still the goal next year. I haven't spent enough time to think about any like, big performance things. I would love to start getting into martial arts again. I would love to get back into jiu-jitsu. So that's something, but other life things are going to take precedence over that. In some sense, I know that I'm rambling, but in some sense, I feel like I need to. I'm itching to compete at something again, something physical, and it's like I don't want to. But the other side of it is like I don't really want to put in all the work to all the particulars of marathon training or going into a powerlifting meet or bodybuilding. Like I don't want to really do any of those things, but I need to find a way to compete with something greater than just like, I want to beat my lifts from last week. Like I need something a little more.
Yeah, it's a good driver to have that event that you're looking forward to, that you're working up to. It's huge. It was really good for me the last 2 years to have that, like that North Star that I'm looking toward, that I'm getting excited about. And I know when I'm doing something, when I'm training, I'm like, this is for that. And, it's tangible.
Yeah. So that'll be a thing. Yeah,
Let me ask you this. If next year you're working towards your lean goal again, and, God forbid this doesn't happen, knock on wood, but you have another injury, like it'll be like the third year in a row where this happens. So what can you do to, not mitigate that, but like, let's say it does happen, then like, have a plan ahead of time for it, as opposed to kind of simply just pivoting to okay, well, now I have to just focus on getting better. Like, does it make sense to have a plan in place ahead of that in case it happens?
I don't think so, only because the getting lean thing is still going to take a back seat. God forbid I get injured again, in any kind of injury. So the plan will be to like go hard at it and just assume that nothing is bad is going to happen. And then if it does, just deal with that when it comes up, maybe be a little bit more aggressive, but I'm already pretty aggressive. But outside of like using peptides and stuff, which I'm getting very interested in using, for injury reasons. Outside of using that, I'm already pretty aggressive with my rehab stuff for any injury, and I'd say I'm pretty good at it. I've done it so many fucking times, but unfortunately, so yeah, I wouldn't have like a pre-planned thing because I wouldn't want to jeopardize my ability to heal from an injury, in favor of like pushing the diet and like getting lean a little bit more, and that will mitigate my ability to heal from the injury quickly. But being in a deep calorie deficit is not not the thing to do while trying to heal an injury for obvious reasons. So I get where you're going with the question, but I don't know what I would really do other than just like go hard until I can't. So
Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of my plan. Again, maybe I'll come up with something that's a little bit more performance driven. Maybe I'll have a change of heart and sign up for some type of competition. I promise it won't be marathon running, but something. Fuck, dude, I'm gonna become a CrossFitter. I know it. I know it. They're going through some shit right now. So
do it.
Yeah, not next year. Maybe something else. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to come up with my own thing. But yeah, man. Anything else before we close this off?
I'll just let you know my real quick before we go off. For next year, my goal, which I've started already this year, is to gain some weight now. So I've been always just hovering around 150 pounds, which is not a lot of weight.
Bro, hold on. Can I interject you for 1 second? Because I forgot about this. Because I'm around the same weight as you. I'm like 155. And for me to get as lean as I want to be, I for sure have to be under 150. And that is a legitimate part of why I think I hold myself back, because I just don't want to weigh less than 150 pounds. It feels like I already feel like so small and tiny at the weight that I'm at. I don't want to be like less than 150, but I know that if I want to get as lean as I want to be, I'm probably gonna have to be close to 140, and that just feels like a tiny little high school boy to me. Yeah, and not that it is, whatever, but that's what it feels like. So there's that aspect of it too, and I think that this is true. For men at whatever weight you're at, even if you're like 175, 180, 190, and you want to get like really lean, like super diced, you have to lose way more fat than you think you do. If you think you need to lose 10 pounds, you probably need to lose like 25 pounds to get like really, really shredded. So if you're at 180, do you really want to weigh 155, 160? Like that feels small as a guy. It's the reverse thing as women.
Yeah.
Where you don't want to gain past a certain amount because you don't want to have muscle. So you don't want to lose past a certain amount because you don't want to be like, I don't want to be 140 pounds. And that's a real thing. So anyways, I just thought I should just mention that. It's like a thing that like, yes, we all struggle with that, me included. And like, I just gotta, if I want to be that lean, then that's something that I have to just get over. And then I can slowly build back up muscle from there while trying to stay that lean. But like, it's just a thing. But anyways, sorry to interrupt.
I'm sure others are feeling the exact same thing. Like probably holding some people back is the fact that you get so small. It feels like anyone can just pick you up. And that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
So my plan is I'm hoping to gain like 20 pounds. So I've already actually gained 10 pounds. So I'm like hovering just over 160. I'm hoping to get to 170, hopefully. And then maybe cut another 5 to 10 pounds after that, just to lean back, because I've lost my 6-pack. And I'm just like, no. It's funny, man. I was just talking to my wife today. I was like, I think not being able to see my 6-pack like every day when I look in the mirror in the morning has had an impact on me, like psychologically, like not completely poorly, but in a negative way. I feel like it's like I'm looking at somebody different than who I'm used to, and I'm just like, who is this like pudgy guy?
100%, dude. The same thing happened to me when I did that big bulk that like a couple of years ago, and I gained a whole bunch of weight, and it was for a process and it was all thought out and all that stuff. But that was part of why it made like the drastic cut that I did afterwards like so easy, because I was so fucking excited to get all that extra fat off. I was just like, I don't like this. Doesn't feel good like physically, and I can't stand looking at this for myself. And so that was why I did it pretty aggressively and pretty quickly and all that stuff. But it was like easy because I just wanted it pretty badly. All right.
Mm-hmm. So
That'll be for you though. That'll be cool.
I've been in a huge caloric surplus since the marathon ended. And how I've been doing this is I have a hard time eating solid foods, like more than what is necessary for just me to like get by. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drink my calories. So then I was like thinking maybe I'll do a gallon of milk a day. Like some people say that, like, go mad for gaining weight. And I was like, that's a little bit too crazy. It's too much. And like, I don't really like that milk that much, but I do make my own yogurt from milk. So I started making like insane amounts of yogurt almost on a daily basis. And I kind of just like will have like a half a liter jar of yogurt like after every meal.
Nice.
And so I think, well, from my rough calculations, I'm getting about an extra 80 grams of protein just from consuming like more yogurt.
Solid. Yeah, that's the thing, man. I mean, that's the exact opposite of like most weight loss advice is like, don't drink your calories. But if you're trying to gain weight is like, yes, drink your calories and put peanut butter and olive oil on everything, because you're just going to up your calories for not filling yourself up that much, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've taken some before pictures. Hopefully the after pictures are looking quite a bit better, and I'll have those ready. Maybe next year we can rehash this and see how it went.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a fun goal. Gaining muscle and gaining weight is the most it's the most fun thing. The training is the most fun. You feel good all the time. It's just, you got to get over the aesthetic piece of it a little bit, but like big numbers in the gym, just like you feel big, you feel, it's a cool feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done it, so time to get back to it.
Yeah, there you go, man. Cool. Well, listen, this has been great as always. I think we should wrap this up, but we've got lots of good stuff to think about and to chew on. So appreciate you always. Anything, contact info, anything else coming up you want to give it heads ups on that I'll throw in the show notes?
Yeah. Just find me, find State of Health. That's my podcast. I haven't posted in a long time, but there is going to be a new podcast popping out. I talked to David Weck for like 2.5, 3 hours. That's going to be coming out soon. I'll have lots of clips associated with that as well. So look out for that, State of Health with JMART.
Amazing. I'll throw it in the show notes, State of Health Podcast. John, appreciate you always. Guys, make sure you're following John and tune into everything that he's got going on. And definitely reach out to him if you have if you're looking to run a marathon and need some help this year. Make sure you're following me, subscribe to the podcast, like, share, notifications, all those good stuff. Helps the show grow and helps more people get in better shape and get healthy. Appreciate each and every one of you. Go outside, be a good person. See you soon.
Thank you for watching or listening till the end of the podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send me a message at jmartfit@substack.com. You can also reach me through social media at jmartfit on Instagram and X. I'm also on Nostr. All the links are in the description. Love you all. Have a good week. Stay active. Be grateful. JMART out.